The Lake Basin Development Authority area of jurisdiction is facing quite a lot of climate change effects, but this is also coupled with the higher number of people who live within the area. That is the population. It is quite high within a small area. And this has accelerated quite a number of things like deforestation, land degradation, among others. And these effects have even affected water availability in the region. So as an authority, it is quite important that we have this discussion, such a debate, on how would we handle water investments in the region, and how would this also gear towards climate change adaptation and mitigation. So over to you, Engineer Jacob Akuno. You're welcome.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, Vincent. I hope I'm loud enough. Okay. As a Lake LBDA coverage, that's 18 counties. Within the bounds, we are implementing projects that are actually affected with the change in the climate. And therefore, if we fail to look for another tack of handling things, or handling the designs, or handling how we implement the projects, then in the near future, we might realize that we don't have any water bodies where we can depend on to develop for the human consumption. And as the LBDA mandate demands that we implement projects that are improving the living standards of the people living within this area. But if we fail to do some proper design work and the implementation planning, then we realize that maybe in the near future, we are not going to have all these projects implemented. Then the poverty and penury will still be existing within the boundaries of the communities where we are living in. Therefore, there are several interventions or discussions that we must discuss, such that we change all how we do things, not normally. But it's because we know very well that the climate change is here with us. We are not going to eradicate it, because climate change is not only in this region, not only in this country, but it's beyond the boundaries of Kenya as well. But as much as we know that different countries have their different ways of doing things, we are not liable to that. And that's why we are saying that climate change will continue existing. Therefore, we must come up with adaptability measures or resilient measures that if we fail to implement all these, then we are not going to be as business as usual, the way we've been doing it. The adaptability measures must be incorporated in the planning process, must also be incorporated in the design of the projects that we are undertaking. So we are only going to do the adaptability part of it, but not completely eradicating it. The adaptability will only mitigate on the impacts and the effects of the climate change. So this is an open discussion that must come up with those measures that is going to reduce or are going to provide resilient measures so that we can live with it. So if the designs are designed as per the changes in the climate, therefore, we are going to live and continue living and even improve further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Engineer Jacob Akuno, for that comment. And for sure, even as an authority, as you have mentioned, there are projects that are geared towards water supply and water investment, which, of course, in the end, would sort out some of the side effects of climate change that the population around are experiencing. At this time, I want to also get now to Mr. Mburu, who is the Regional Director for Ken Invest. Ken Invest is an authority that would look at some investment areas within Kenya. They come up, get some proposals and projects, concepts from authorities like LBDA, and then they give out to the world for any interested investor. and therefore quite a lot that they have done even in this region. And now we would narrow it down to water investment ideas that are there and projects that would help that we be climate change resilient. So, Mr. Mburu, you're welcome for your comments.
Thank you. Once again, as I said, from Ken Invest, and I think for the benefit of the private sectors that may be here, over and above the facilitation that we do for projects like what LBDA has come up with, our key area is facilitation. Because from the onset, I think you've been even following on the social media and other print, and even print media, the issues of the cost of doing business in the country is quite high. And as an institution, our main work is to provide a green channel through what we call one-stop center, which is basically a Huduma Center for investment facilitation. Now, water is everywhere. You'll find you need water at home. Industries need water at industrial level. But because of the challenges that we are currently facing, increase in population has led to increase of water demand. And I think as a region, I think we must say we are lucky. I think we are quite well endowed with water resources. If you look at the catchment for the Lake Victoria Basin, and I think those who work with ABDA know better than this. I'm sure you have the statistics. And also the presence of our lake here. But what are the challenge? The key challenge has been, one, issues of access to the same water. There has also been issues of the quality of the same water, and especially when you you go to the lake, if you get water from our lake here and you do some analysis, you will find that that water, to some extent, it's quite polluted. And why then? And the pollution is from industrial and from upstream, our farming activities up there. Now, the population within the catchment areas have encroached on the water catchment areas, meaning that they are affecting the source. So if you are not careful, we might end up being water deficits, both for consumption and industrial use. So having that in mind then, what measures or what do we need to do? I think we now need to come out of our comfort zones and come up with policies and regulations that will encourage investments in alternative water sectors. Not just the traditional water, like from the rivers. We need to go beyond and think, how can we even protect things like planting of trees? What incentives do we give to those people who are going to plant the trees? Water ponds and dams. But now, as my predecessor has just said, the designs of those projects must be guided by a regulatory framework that is going to talk about abstraction, the water use policies, and things like the water quality. And most importantly, the conservation part of it. We need to ensure that the whole water value chain, right from the catchment to the flow of the rivers to the dams and the lakes, that we have mechanisms that are going to ensure that we don't have pollution and that the water that is ending up there is quality. And lastly, is also to make sure that our industries are using technologies that do not pollute very inadequate waters that we already have, because the moment they continue polluting what we have, then it means we are going to be water deficit at a faster rate than we think. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mburu, for that. Maybe we would just appreciate with a round of a clap to both to Engineer Akuno and Mr. Mburu. Thanks so much for the insights. And now I just want to welcome the Director in charge of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Water being one of the natural resources, Director Philip Olo is the one in charge of all natural resources this side of Kenya. You're most welcome, Director.
Thank you.
Speak on. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful and I'm also humbled to be associated with the natural resource issues in this region. The enthusiasm and the love for nature is the only solution that we have left on our hand today for us to combat issues of climate change that is already showing signs of even pushing us to near extinction. There will be several programs that relates to conservation of nature, utilization of the resources that we have at hand. But if there is no love for nature itself, no enthusiasm for the natural ecosystem, then we will fail to do this sustainably. We will end up overutilizing the resources that we have at the expense of the source of these resources that we have. So I'll put it at that and then wait for the next question.
Okay, thank you so much. You would want to still go on now with the water investment? A comment on that? Yes, we still give you more time
So,
that you may share something again on water investment within the region.
another thing I may make mention of at this time is that the Lake Basin region is nearly the wettest region in this country, served with close to 7 permanent river resources flowing through it and bordering the Lake Victoria itself, though a small section of it that is in Kenya. But unfortunately, because of the climate change issues that relates also to the precipitation in this region, other than being the wettest, the region currently serves as one of the driest too. Driest at a time whereby occasionally we have excess waters coming with the floods in this region, but again narrowing down to the dryness when the rain stop because of the unpredictability of this. And for us now to utilize the resources that we have in this region, and especially for agricultural production and livestock management, it is important that we give this region a different look that first of all has to redo the spatial planning of this region in a way that we identify what needs to be produced at a particular point and what may be produced at another one. We have to get into the programs of harvesting the water when there is plenty of it at some time. But at the same time, we also need to conserve the water towers in such a way that now, as the precipitation comes down, the soils in these areas are able to absorb the same water resources, sponge it down in the soil, and releases it systematically for the utilization in the lower areas. The authority has made efforts to study all the rivers in this region and has also identified areas of conservation and also of storage of water. And these have been developed to a level that now they are attracting the investment by partners from all over that will now help to construct the multi-purpose dams. Once done, it will be possible now for the rivers that we have in this region, where possible, to store the waters, solve one problem of flooding during certain time, which has also characterized this region. You remember the famous talk of Serikali's idea. You remember that? So these waters will have to be stored in these conservation points, and then will be released systematically throughout the year to undertake irrigation of the cropping systems and also of the livestock production. The same waters will be able to enable constant flow to the households and industrial or places for manufacturing. In this way, we will be able now to take advantage of the wetness of this region and also to mitigate against the dryness that comes at a time. And in addition to production, the same waters now will enhance the capacity of fisheries production in the Lake Victoria and create more water resources upstream to enhance that. This region, unfortunately or fortunately, is also the most highly populated area in this region. It therefore calls for utilization of agricultural systems, food production system, in a way that takes keen interest in the climatic conditions and conservation of the same environment. The utilization of crops that are drought tolerant, climate smart in a way, is also very important and is being encouraged in this area. The reduction of livestock that overly damage the environment and the system that we have, and replacing them with those that are more productive, but at the same time utilizes very little amount of resources, will be encouraged in this case. The development of fruit culture in this region is becoming more and more important as a way of also enhancing livelihood and at the same time encouraging the conservation nature in a way that that farmer who owns land that even borders the river and therefore cannot be compelled to utilization of the river banks in a particular way, now will be able to conserve those river banks with the fruit trees, the bamboo trees, the one that can conserve nature, but at the same time will lead them to a platform of enhancing their economy. It is important again that at this time here, we think of the whole value chain of our production and whole value chain of environmental conservation, and utilize the environmental conservation in a way that also help in the earning of the livelihood. This region houses some of the best acacias in this world and can be utilized to produce honey, at the same time conserving the environment. So when we do all this, come together in a collaborative approach, we will be both able to satisfy the needs of the growing population, but at the same time conserving the environment to avoid the excesses that we may have around there. But I did mention that the propelling factor may not even be the energy that we have, but the love, enthusiasm of the nature that we found, in a way that we'll be able to say that God gave us this beautiful Eden and will not die rich, but leave the world so much damaged that even the wealth that we created by destroying the environment, a time comes that we now leave them behind. So I thank you for that, and I think we are going to leave onto this. Thank you.
Let's appreciate him with a round of applause. He has talked as the overall manager of natural resources in the region. Thanks so much, Director Philip. This time I want to welcome Mr. Sam Kidera, who is also the regional coordinator, Blue Economy. He made some remarks, but now we are narrowing down to the water investment in this region in line with climate change adaptation and mitigation. Mr. Sam, you're welcome.
Thank you, moderator. I want to state that accelerating climate resilience, water investment in the lake region resilience is key. If there is an event, and this particular event takes place, and you cannot come back to your life styles where you are living, then it means that you will take more time to run your activities in your household as pertain to water and water use. Today, if a river is polluted as a result of catchment activities, that it will lead to a lot of social injuries, including ill health in our households, even to ourselves. How long will we take to come back to where we were? That is resilience. Let me give it a blue economy perspective. Investment in water investment in the Lake Basin. Let's think about water stocks. Do we participate in investing in companies or investing in organizations that participate in water and irrigation, water treatment and supplies, and other related investments in water? If today we have Kiwasco trading in its stocks in the Nairobi Stock Exchange, and then as a stakeholder, also as an individual, you buy these stocks, what comes from such kind of investment is going to be plowed back in ensuring that there is sustainability in the water industry. And if all of you invest, then we know there are benefits. That is going to make you also be more resilient, rather than just sitting and then you allow these particular companies or industries or investors participate on their own. Why do I say so? If I participate and as an investor by buying stocks from such companies that are trading in water stocks, then I will ensure that if it is Kiwasco, then they do the best thing to ensure that what they supply to the people is within its standards. And you will not participate to support a company that is just doing the opposite of what is expected in terms of standards. If we have invested, for example, in Mulukoba fish landing sites, and they have decided to process water for human consumption, and it grows to the level that they invest and start trading in the stock markets. As somebody who is also interested in sustainability of the environment, are they using the right mechanisms? Are they using the right standards to ensure that this particular water they are processing and reaching the population, if you also invest with them, are you going to sit back and see them use orthodox methods to ensure that they injure the environment, at the same time produce a product from this environment? To me, that is what entails investment in water in the region. So how do we participate? All of us. The investors will come, they will grow their investments, but what is your participation in this particular matter? So that is what I wanted to highlight and to bring the blue economy perspective in terms of investment in the water sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's appreciate him with a round of applause. Thank you so much, Mr. Sam. Finally, we go to the only lady in the panel, CPA Christine Otieno, still on the matter of climate change resilience, water investment in the region, Lake Basin region. Welcome.
Thank you, Deputy Director, Engineer Vincent. As you've heard, board directors, MD, delegates, all due protocol observed. From my end, I am Christine Otieno, Director of Corporate Services. I'll tackle it on the issues of finance in terms of climate. We cannot talk about climate change without, in a way, putting climate finance. The two seem to be harnessed together. There are interventions you can do without climate finance. But we know that climate finance will enhance or accelerate most of the climate change issues that you're talking about on the conversations we have right now. So basically, climate finance is having to mobilize or look for finances in terms of, we're looking about local, national, international, that can help you scale up on issues of climate change. But even as you're looking for finances, we have to understand that outside there are billions or trillions of dollars that the world is collecting for climate change right now. That is from IMF. And what comes is only a few billions that can be able to gather together in terms of the Paris Agreement. We have 193 countries which are now coming up and giving in towards the climate change initiatives. And they have found out that most of these climate changes are affecting the developing countries or the economies that are coming up, and these are mostly in Africa, Asia. And that means we have a lot in terms of climate change initiatives that we have to take. So even as we're talking about the climate finance, we have to look at whether the governments and the stakeholders at European understand how to access the financial needs of the developing countries. What are we putting across the table in terms of funding? We're also talking about understanding how to mobilize ourselves, not only as the Lake Basin, also as the Lake Basin, and putting ourselves on board of conversations with the global arena, with the African agenda. As we are discussing this is already a good step, and I appreciate the MD for having thought about it. This is a step towards putting ourselves on the map in the Africa and in the world. Number two is that we have to understand to achieve a balance between adaptation and mitigation. And this we talked about sustainability. It's not just about getting funds, but how do you sustain the climate change initiatives that you introduce on the ground so that they go on and the conversation continues towards 2050, towards a generation. That is why we're talking about roping in the grandmothers, roping in the youth, roping in those that are in our current generation, so that this climate change does not just stop at this level, but it is continuing on until we get a better world, a better earth, that people who will come after us shall appreciate that we have done initiatives or taken steps to ensure that we have be able to mitigate against climate change issues which are affecting us. And then also looking at assessing the progress in the provision and mobilization of support towards this part. When you're talking about climate change, you're going to talk about issues of giving account on the funds that have been issued to you as an institution. Nobody wants to give you money if you cannot account for the money. Anybody that is given money, whether it is globally, whether it is the government, whether it is a partner, a collaboration, we're talking about having transparent systems on the ground. We're talking about having the capacity in terms of not only the human resource infrastructure that are going to use to account for any funding that comes. Number two, we are going to talk about monitoring and evaluation tools that you have put in place to monitor and evaluate the continuous progress of climate change initiatives on the ground. All these come in the finance model that you're talking about. So going forward, even as we continue the conversation, climate financing should not backstop at money. Climate should be looked at you and I can be able to do on the ground. So that we ask ourselves, even in my home, in my village, what initiative have I done or taken to ensure that I either have an intervention or adopt or an adaptation of the climate change effects in our society. If you come from a village, you come from Siaya, you come from Bondo, anywhere in the lake basin, you ask yourself, it has not cost you to plant a tree. It will cost you 5 bob, 10 shillings, or very few. But what have you done within the community that you're coming from in terms of this before the conversation starts? Our plea is to have ourselves as individuals address interventions, then you move the conversations towards the climate global. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Let's appreciate CPA, Christine, Director. Thank you for your input, giving us an insight on the financial aspects in climate change resilience. And that is all from our panelists, which was basically focusing on water investments in the region as one of the strategies for climate change resilience. And as we know that climate change resilience is all about how we can quickly recover from the side effects of climate change. We are only resilient to what has already happened. We only become resilient to an effect that are already in place. So already we are experiencing adverse effects of climate change, and therefore there must be strategies. We narrowed down to water, and each and every panelist has given us some of the insights on how within this region we would have water investments that would help us be resilient towards climate change effects. With this, I want to leave it open for any comment from the floor. We have some 10 minutes for any comment from the floor. We'll have a microphone going around, some 2 or 3 people. First, we will start from director here. This is climate change resilience and focusing on to water investments in this region. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, maybe you would introduce yourself first so that the people
I
would
will.
know. Okay.
My name's are Martin Olo, the current Director Environment and Climate Change in Kisumu County. I'm very happy with the LBDA for what they have done. They called us for a meeting here a week or 1.5 weeks ago to discuss the events of today. And I think we really talked. I'm happy that we are talking about water. And first of all, I love what I'm doing. And I would say God gave us 3 pillars in our lives to live on. God gave us water as a pillar for us to live on. God gave us air that we breathe and we live on. Then God gave us land to use. The 3 pillars that God gave to us as nature, or we call natural resources, has come to halt us because we are misusing them. Because of the misuse of the 3, that is why we are here today discussing about climate change and possibly discussing about water use. Our resilience is good, but as maybe the panelists have said, for how long? Because we only do resilience on what we have. But supposing we continue destroying, what will happen? The most important thing is how do we stop it, not to continue, so that we live with it, to adopt it. If we do that, then we are going to do better for nature. So the challenge goes to the lake basin, and I told them when we were here that their main part should be advocacy. They should be able to stop destruction of the natural resources so that our waters can be saved. And we all agree water is a combination of 2 gases, that is hydrogen and oxygen. So without the 2 gases, there is no water. They talked well about mitigation measures and what have you. So my challenge to all of us as a government The only thing government maybe be able to do is the policy to guide us so that we don't do what we are not supposed to do. And if you do the wrong thing, then the law will take its course. So I'm very happy to know that at least we are gearing towards and understanding the climate effects. And also say that we are looking at what causes the climate. Where do we get them? We get them from our daily-to-day operations, and some are very natural. So how do we mitigate these greenhouse effects? Hello? Yeah, how do we mitigate these greenhouse effects? But the other question you ask yourself, do we need greenhouse gases? Because if we eradicate them, then the human life and any other life will also not be there. So the most important thing is how do we mitigate so that we don't go beyond what we don't need for the increase of the temperature that we're going to talk about the climate effects. So what we need to do maybe to the authority is to help and maybe tell us how the capacity building to enlighten people, to educate people, because the moment we destroy water, then the Lake Basin Authority will not be there. What we really need from you is to help us do mitigation, advocacy for the misuse so that we can be able to sustain our lives for future and the rest. For the Madam Christine, as the financer, it's very true that when money comes for something, there is also a misuse of that thing. And the partners who are supporting really need value for their money. So we really think that for us to be able to sustain our nature, the three pillars of nature, the air, the water, and the soil, we need to work with the partners so that the government will be able to put what is required in place so that we can be able to sustain our life for good. But let us not allow it to continue. I would have talked about, maybe the time will allow, I would talk more about the environment, water, and what have you. Later the nafas will be there. But at the moment, the authority to help us to mitigate, to advocate, and also to be able to do what is necessary to stop destruction of the three pillars of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director. Thank you so much. We have two hands. Briefly, let's have the two, then we wind up. Start with the lady. You're welcome. Kindly introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Pamela Were. I'm an environmental ecologist, a senior lecturer, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga University of Science and Technology, and also a member of EIK. Thank you so much, the panelists, for such an insightful discussion. I would like to raise a few issues. One, concerning investments in the water sector so that we have a climate resilient region. We talk so much about the technical approaches and what is done at national level or even at regional level. But my concern is, what investments do we have at the grassroots level so that we can include the communities in what we are talking about? Two, what are the specific climate actions in water investments? Because we talk of what we are doing, how the water investment can be done to be to give climate resilience in the community. But my concern is currently, what are the specific climate actions since the time that climate action or the Sustainable Development Goals were initiated and implemented. And that really brings my concern to what the youths are doing. How are we including the youth and the children in climate conversations and in mitigation and adaptation measures? And I'm saying this because if you look at climate crisis, it is something that affects all of us. Everyone has a contribution and everyone has a role to play. We all contribute to the climate problem and we all have a role to play in it. How are we involving everyone, and particularly the youth, in the climate conversation? Another issue is, Madam Christine, you talked about climate financing and you outlined so much. I would like you maybe to tell the audience or the delegates a few of the available climate funds and how they can access them so that all can participate in the climate adaptation and mitigation measures. Lastly, when we have conversations like this, we come up with very good papers, and a lot of it is on technical approaches. My challenge to this summit is, what are the adaptive approaches that we are going to have from this conversation that can be easily implemented by each and every one of us? And the adaptive measures will include all of us, because when we look at climate change issue, I tend to think that our behavior is more important, because we all need to understand how we can go about everything and a changed mindset. So the adaptive approaches, I think, will create a long-lasting solution, because it will end up giving us a transformed mindset of each and everyone in the society. And then, how do we come together to work as a group? Synergy building is most important. Otherwise, if each and every one of us goes into their institution and we do the same things, we are going to duplicate. But if we come together, then I think we can have a long-lasting solution. And this is a greater challenge to LBDA that has called this. How are you going to bring everyone together so that we work together as a common family for the Lake Region development? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's appreciate Dr. Pamela. Thank you so much for the questions you've given. They are questions, but they are also giving ideas. Let's welcome him for a comment.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Joash Oruta, working with Water Resource Authority as the regional coordinator for Lake Victoria South, Basin area, and a member of Interministerial Committee on Climate Change Financing in Treasury. My first concern is about the availability of water. As the panelists have said, actually one of the panelists said, we are almost lacking or having less water in Lake Region. What I can say is that we already have less water. We don't have enough water in Lake Region. In the year 2005, per capita of water in Lake Victoria South was 1,200 meter cubed per person per capita, which has now declined to less than 1,000 meter cubed per capita. It means that we are now approaching, we are just going down into less than what the World Health Organization recommends. And if it continues like this because of the climate change, it means even the Lake Region which most people in Kenya are considering as the bathroom for God, where we have a lot of, a lot of water, we are not going to have water. I give a proposal that in this sense, we sensitize and educate and do all what we can, maybe which can come through the funding which you are talking about, to everybody looking at this water as something which we can store and use when there is less water. Imagine now we are saying of El Nino, a few days to come, we are going to say now we don't have water. For the first time here in Lake region, we had to close down all irrigational schemes in Mara Basin, which is part of Lake Victoria Basin. Actually, we closed all of the irrigations which are lying on those river systems, and also part of Upper of Nyando. We also closed the irrigation. How long are we going to continue closing the irrigation? And we are depending again on this food so that we can feed our people. So let's put the storage, we give it one of the preferences that we can store not only in large dams, but we can also store in our houses. Each one of us can have at least one, maybe 10,000 meter cubed of a tank. Whether it is a traditional way of doing it, whether it's scientific, but let's put up some storage in our homes. The second thing, we are looking also at the water quality of these rivers which we have, and also the lake. It is us, as we invest in industries, as we invest in other activities, we are also polluting the water which we are yet to use. So, water availability can only not be of, we cannot only look at the quantity, but we have to look at the quality of the water. So the investors, I know here we are, most of the delegates are also investors. Please look at how we can treat this water before we release it to the water bodies. That's when it can be available for us to use. And that's when we can also have good investment in the future, not only ourselves, but also to our ecosystem. So that's the comment which I wanted to make, and thank you. We can take action on this one. And when we are making the financing, maybe we make our deliberations on finance. Let's try to get finance. How can we generate proposals on this one, and then we get finance and make our water quality and quantity adequate to us today, future, and for our grand and great-grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's appreciate his comment. Finally, let's have our sister here. She's somewhere in the middle. Kindly also introduce yourself and give your comment. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, LBDA. Thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. My name is Safid McKenna. As you have the name, I come from Central, but I'm married here. I will use a very simple Mimbi language to express my points. I own some companies, kind of shareholder, and also I do farming. Thank you for the invite. There are some concerns I've been having for quite some time, and I thank God I'm in the right place to express it in a simple way. Yeah, Kisumu, I've been doing farming, very true. I keep livestock, I do farming. And there are so much challenges which we have been going through, whereby Helek, one of our panelists there, has expressed them. But still, doing my own research and also kind of trying to find out how do we overcome this challenge of you know, there is those exploitations, and also there is a way we utilize the resources we have. We have, yes, fresh water around. I have also come from several counties whereby we do farming history. Yes, there are those regulatory rules which we need to follow. Unasikia mtu akikwambia there are treaties which were signed, you cannot use that water. Pollution, yes, is there. But how do we utilize this water? In fact, I was trying to consult, am I supposed to use the recent challenges we have been having around the region, maybe Mandamano, and experience the hardest part pain, whereby there were no food productions. Maybe I felt Kisumu is a business place, but at all, if we have a natural resource, water there, people could be doing farming, it could be best for us. So how do we ensure maybe those treaties, and maybe we freely reach? I can see most of the youth are here. You utilize the resources we have easily without not putting so much. There's so much reinforcement we put in order to start acquiring a particular size, doing farming, but you see how the climate is, things are drying up. Irrigations and whatever may not sustain, but how would we get that support to reach even those maybe small scale farming, because we start from there to become the large farmers. I think that's the only question I have. Most will come as we are proceeding.
Okay, just
Thank
as
you.
you give back the mic, so what's the exact challenge with accessing water and the treaties that are already signed? A member wanted to really get it clearly.
Yeah, sometimes, yes, we face those challenges as farmers, and we try to find how do we assess that natural resource we have, and why is it not helpful, for example, for the starters, those small scale farming, and to develop to be a large scale farmer? What measures are there to reach those people who practice or who have intentions of bringing the food production in the region?
So it's about water abstraction.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's appreciate our sister. I see there are quite a number of hands, but would you allow me just to have one youth to make a comment? And this my friend right there, just to give.
Guests, visitors, I thank you for this occasion. My name's Donald Brian Otieno, and I was just asking one question. How can we conserve the stratosphere? Hence, you find that the vehicles and the factories are removing the fumes into the air, so that we can control the environment by planting. How can we protect our environment through controlling the emissions of the fumes and also the vehicles? Some are removing bad fumes. And number two, about the drainage systems, we find that they are polluting our the lake. How can we protect also the drainage system so that we can conserve our lake very well? And also you find that the urban cities, how can we plant trees on the urban cities so that it can give us good environment, and we can also, thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's appreciate that youth. Thank you. I would request that if you allow me, we have some few reactions from the panelists, just a few comments. We have quite a number of questions, and some of them are going to be handled in other topics. Our discussion now was only focusing on one topic, that is climate change resilience, and focusing on water investment in the region. We have 11 other topics which might capture also quite a number of issues that have been raised. But I would want to request Engineer Jacob Akuno to react on a few. I think there's a question from Dr. Pamela. And then I will also welcome the panelists, anything they would want to capture from the floor for this time. You're welcome, Engineer.
Thank you, thank you. I'm only going to react to a question from Dr. Pamela that talks about the investment opportunity for water investment opportunities at the grassroots level. We know very well that for us to take care of the environment and the climate change, some of them are a little bit technical, of which I don't want to go to that because as per the question that has been asked. So far there are several interventions that can actually be done at the grassroots level as pertains water investment. One of them that we actually do, we ensure that wherever we are doing a water project, mostly on the boreholes, because you know most of the water sources that we have are not that quite of good quality. So most of the time we go for boreholes which will not require large investments to implement. For this case, we include even the communities plus the schools to do some kind of seedling production for tree development. For this case, is a way in which you do both conservation of the aquifer and also at the same time you provide water to the communities. That way, if you provide this to the communities, they plant trees mostly in the areas where the bores have been done. It will enable okay, thank you. I'm saying that we integrate borehole water production from the boreholes. Thank you. Integrated with the seedling production. In that way, forestry within the area will provide more recharge to our aquifers because we cannot continue pumping from the aquifer. That can lead to depletion of our aquifers. We have to look for another intervention of recharging them. That's one way that we normally go through so that we ensure that our aquifers are up to date. Another way is providing sensitization. We sensitize most of the communities through trainings and capacity building on how they can come up with the innovative or novel projects. You know, there are so many people outside there within the communities who are able to come up with good projects apart from all us who sit in the offices and do all this. We give them a way in which they can provide proposals or innovative or novel projects that can provide an intervention for the climate change, but only through water provision. So these sensitizations enlightened them on ways in which they can actually maintain their water infrastructures and also how they can conserve the water bodies, mostly if it is not borehole, is the water body that have been abstracted from the streams and so on. So those conservation issues are being trained, and Director Philip can attest to that. Is the one in charge of the natural and resources. He can attest to that. There are several trainings that have been taking place within the local communities to ensure that all our natural resources, that includes even water, are conserved. Therefore, That's the only portion that I can, maybe more can be addressed by my colleagues who are within the panel.
So thank you so much. Any panelists who want to make a comment? Let me just give you a mic. So you'll allow us just to have some few comments from here. Then we wind it up because we have another session after the lunch break. Dr. Oh,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Guru, you're welcome.
Thank you. I think I'll start with the last one by Brian, who has rightly observed the issues of the drainage. He's asking how do we continue conserving the environment yet industries and vehicles continue to pollute. I think as you've noticed in the last few months, there has been accelerated effort by the government in terms of promoting what we are calling eco-friendly practices. On Friday, we launched the e-bike, yeah? The electric motorcycles in Mombasa. And prior to that, you've seen a lot of efforts in terms of promoting. In fact, Nairobi, we already have electric cars. I don't know whether in Kisumu we have. Huh? I saw at some point we launched some e-boats. Yeah? So there are efforts by the government, but these can only be sustained through legislation and policy. So I think there are regulatory frameworks which have been put in place to encourage. And I think on the national goal, I don't know whether someone may be aware, in 2015, after the Paris summit, each country committed to reduce the emissions to some certain level. So they are meant to have, we have national targets. I'm not sure exactly where we are. It is through that national strategy that we are able to look at measures, and I think use of renewable energy, going electrical, and are some of the ways that the government is trying to do to mitigate against that. Secondly, about planting of trees, I think you've seen Kisumu City. There has been a program of beautifying the city through the Office of the City Manager. Maybe LBDA can take this one in terms of how is this happening within other towns in the region. I think the youth can actually be involved in this. We have a very huge target in terms of achieving our forest cover. I think this is a program that can be adopted and taken to the grassroots, and it can involve the youth. Now, my friend from Central, I think you talked about some challenges. I think Philip will talk. I mean, maybe you're talking about the Nile Treaty. Philip will talk about that, but maybe you can also meet us to understand from an investment perspective exactly what are the issues, because I think it didn't come out very clearly, but I think he'll touch on the issues of the Nile Treaty and the use of the waters from the lake. And also, the government has also we have the Climate Change Act of 2016 and Climate Finance Policy. The problem is that this information, it's not on the ground. Yeah? So I think we have a duty now to see how are we going to propagate this information to those who need to use it. Again, I'm taking the challenge back to LBDA. Can we have a program after this summit to be able to go to individual counties, even to sub-counties? Let's go and spread this gospel so that people know. I think the gentleman from the Office of the Environment talked about how can we prevent, and I think that's one of the ways that LBDA can contribute in terms of prevention. And Dr. Pamela, I think you should have been part of this panel. You talked about, you were asking about, I think the youth, how they can be involved. Maybe I've mentioned one way or the other. I want to support you. Yes, we need to do a lot of capacity building so that people can be able to know exactly what is expected. And I think our offices can invest. There is need to partner between institutions and academia. I think we invite you, maybe we can meet behind the tent and see how we can propagate this further. And again, LBDA roping this one forth because we need all the expertise on board. In terms of the specific actions, in terms of the water sector now, what we might need to understand, it is good today we are talking about water and from an investment perspective. Now, why are we talking about water? Water being a social good, just like roads, things like health, it has not been a very attractive area to the private sector in terms of financing and investment. But why is water becoming key? It's because of what he said about three things: water, air, and land. All these are, is air a scarce resource? But water is becoming, already we are scarce. So it's becoming an opportunity. Where there's opportunity, then the private sector go for the returns. That's why you see a lot of investment we are getting, inquiries. They want to go and invest in the water sector. But then, how do we trade in water, which is a social good? This water is how much? This water is very expensive compared to a liter of petrol. No. Why is it expensive? I think you've seen a lot of people have gone to bottling of water. So, what has the government done? We've come up with policies. In fact, today, we have even come up with the tariffs, like what we have in electricity, water purchase agreement, because we want to encourage quality, sustainable ways of investing in the water sector so that you do not take advantage of the population, because water is a social good. But because the government itself cannot be able to provide that water. And I think you've seen the current government had a target of doing about 100 dams in this financial year. It's because of the recognition that we are becoming water scarce. So we've started with the policy. There's a policy framework. We have a PPA agreement for water. And I think now that's need again to be downscaled so that people at the grassroots can be able to do. And this is inclusive of women and the youth. So I think I've been able to touch to address some of the sentiments, though maybe not in details. But yes, there are frameworks. We have policies. And now what we are advocating for is now incentives that will help or attract more investment in quality water sector. Maybe before I give the mic, I may not talk again. I want us to think and challenge ourselves as a region, because we must come out of this place with some way forward. I'm told in Israel, when it rains, you don't see the flood water. I don't know how many of you have been to Israel. They have a mechanism whereby they harvest the rainwater, the floods, and it is stored in underground system and it is channeled. That water is used for irrigation and other for cleaning purposes, like in the car washes and others. So I want to pose a question: who is best suited to drive such a policy initiative? The reason why today we have most of the buildings with the solar is because we came with a policy on all buildings before approval of building plans must have provision for solar. So who is going to drive this policy? That how do we start harvesting flood water? And I think that's an outcome that I'll be there again. I want to challenge you because you called us here. You might need to see how. You might need to put a group together. How do we do this practically? And that water can be used to give to our friends who is complaining that they cannot access the Lake Victoria water. But it is doable. It can be done. What we need is a framework, regulations, incentive. And then we use a framework of PPP, public-private partnership. We work together. And hopefully, it could work. That's a challenge. Dr. Pamela, you could do a feasibility study on that. Hapo iko kazi naona. Let's think about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You have a comment? We'll have maybe a few comments briefly so that we wind up. Thank you.
Maybe I'll only start with the question that Dr. raised on the involvement of youth and children. There are many areas whereby, especially the Lake Basin Development Authority has been involving the youth and children, which I may not mention all of them. But for the youths, there has been a campaign around our technology transfer centers to sensitize the youth that are involved in agriculture and cultivation to utilize the climate smart agriculture, choice of crops and choice of plant material and animals to venture in. When the authority adopted a serious campaign to grow trees in this region, one area that was picked on is that one of school greening programs. So we decided to dispose the seedlings that we produce in so many schools, and each school now, with the utilization of the children in those programs, they have been able to grow a lot of trees. And not only growing them, but in all those programs, they have been also sensitized to take care of these trees, and again, help them to start their own nurseries. There was a time I went to Nandi, and a teacher confronted me that, do you know this is your forest, planted by Lake Basin? I also had forgotten that we had initiated that one. So there are quite a lot of greening that has been done in this region related to these youth and children. Our nurseries have also been a point of training of the youth to start their own programs. And at the moment, much as we are still involved in the production and greening, quite a number of them have gone to the stage of commercialization of those nurseries that they have within them. Then you also address the issue of the various climate action program that we are having that are involving and integrating the communities and are adaptable to them. I mentioned earlier on that if we identify that tree growing will help us combat especially climate change issues related to too much emission of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and therefore growing of these trees to absorb this, we also picked on the point of helping them grow the trees that can also help them earn a living, like growing of fruits. So today we tell them plant trees so that we do not import fruits in this region. And interestingly enough, for the people living in the lake region, this region has got the potential of producing the best quality fruits in this country. Actually, as we enhance the production, the next step will be to brand the kind of fruit that are produced here and check. Eat any mango grown from this region. The level of sweetness is more enhanced than any that comes in from as far as the Tana River. The aroma that is in it is much great. And the acidity that also adds into it makes them very good. So currently we are encouraging on that, because one thing that somebody asked, that why do I invest in climate change mitigation measures? What do I get from it? The return from my investment has also to play a role. In addition to this, there have also been programs that are encouraging the growing of the trees for commercial purposes. You plant them today in woodlots so that tomorrow you can harvest them and you earn a livelihood. And the more you earn, the more you'll feel like growing them more and more. I think Sam will also mention something also to do with aquaculture and things with that. As far as synergy is concerned and bringing people together, actually that's why this conference has been put here, to bring about people from all over this region in a forum whereby we can talk together, understand each other, develop a strategy that all of us are going to implement in a way that will bring about change. But not only in this, LBDA has also played a role in bringing organizations in various forums, because one of the mandates of the authority is that one of coordination. It's not possible to coordinate without bringing people together. Even the county governments currently exist in isolation, each government on its own. But unfortunately for us is that our mandate is going beyond the county boundaries, and therefore we are able to intervene on climate issues that go beyond. Another example of that is that currently these environmental issues, development issues have been crystallized in a program that addresses the blue economy in this region. In the earlier stages, LBDA started it with only Kenya Maritime Authority. But at the moment, it's bringing together nearly 36 agencies that are playing a role in this, right from conservation to development itself. In addition to this, there are also private partners and lovers of the blue economy in this region. Jane is sitting over there. It's also part of it. Can testify that whenever these people come together, among things that they talk about is that one of the synergies that are required in combating issues of climate. Madam Faith, fortunately for us, the current economy is driven by young people. And most likely even their fathers do not know about the Nile Treaty. So nobody has ever asked them about the Nile Treaty. And the Nile Treaty was done even before we got our independence. Our independence and other sovereignties that also surround us is very, very important and guarded by the people that are living under those sovereignty. So today, there is no way we can talk of climate change mitigation if we do not encourage irrigation as a way of enhancing agricultural productivity and feeding the people. There is no country that will want its people to starve. So from this point, it can be known that irrigation, anywhere possible, is being promoted, and guidance can only come in terms of maybe a few regulations from our own agencies. An example, we have the Water Resource Authority in this country can guide on how you can abstract the waters from our rivers and from our lakes. NEMA also exists there so that you do not interfere with the people that are also there downstream, but you are being encouraged to do that as much as possible. I think I'll stop it there so that my other colleagues can also continue with one or two things.
Thank you so much, Director. Yes, you want to make some.
Thank you. I think I will also make some reactions to some two concerns, one brought by Faith and one involvement of youth in climate, in water investment. History is something very important. I was a follower of Sarafina, Madam Musambuka, who says history is so good. It tells you where you come from and where you are and perhaps where you'll be going. Perhaps not known by many. I want to bring to your attention, Lake Victoria has dried at least 3 times in its lifetime. And that information is driving some of the key policy directions that have been taken regionally, nationally, and internationally. And I think that's why it was in the wisdom to come up with the Nile Treaty, just to protect it, so that it doesn't interfere or does not disappear, and then it becomes a vast field of grassland, the way it was before. Now, climate change is also driving its shrinking rate. I want to tell you currently, Lake Victoria is ranked by at least 2 meters in terms of its depth. And if vis-a-vis its surface area of 68,800 square meters. Now, look at that particular mass of water. That is decreasing at that particular alarming rate in the wake of climate change. Yeah, so this one is one of the core grassroots or root cause analysis that will make us to come up with the most resilient climate actions that will always keep us afloat. Like we said before, that climate funds, the international bodies will account for 79%. And this one through finance, technology development, and transfer capacity building. Let me draw you to the M-Pesa as a technology. It was brought up by a youth. As a government, we are trying to engage youths in different sectors, especially in the education sector, so that they are equipped with a vast knowledge in terms of what they're supposed to come up with. You realize that there is middle-level colleges and vocational training centers that are being funded and being supported by the government so that youths are engaged in all this particular dispensation. So it is upon us How do we involve the youth? An example, recently there was a group from Canada. There are a lot of funds. There are a lot of funds that is supposed to be supporting youth and youth empowerment and action in climate change. This is Women in Blue Economy. The communication was done through our ministry, and we were told to disseminate this information. I think I did stakeholders analysis and bringing on board all the youth in this particular region. In fact, in the all 10 counties in Lake Victoria, in Nyanza and Western region. You know what? Through that particular list, you remember when the president was in Mulukoba, there was a check which was released to two women youth groups. One from Migori, another one from Busia, a check of 56 million. We just gave them the link, and they applied. These links are available. We should ask ourselves, how are youth engaged in this particular linkages so that they access these particular opportunities? So the opportunities are available, but do we have the proper platform in which we can make the youth access these particular funds so that they are actively engaged in climate actions? Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have a comment? CPA Christine will make the final comment, then we end this session, we break.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Mine would be to just add on what our delegate, Professor Pamela, had raised an issue of funding. We know there are quite a number of people doing good work outside there in terms of youth, in terms of women, in terms of NGOs, and they are wondering how they can come on board. From where I sit, most of the funding that has been coming through us is through the MDAs, through the mainstream government in terms of ministries, departments, and agencies. That will be one of the major sources. And this is a government initiative that it takes funding directly from, we have bodies like IMF, you have the World Bank, you have the ADBs, you have the ECCs, European Commission, so you cannot really directly link yourself to the international financing. But we're talking about having collaborations and partnerships with other institutions like Lake Basin. For example, we have a fund which is a Kenya Adaptation Fund Program. This fund has a funding of 1 billion Kenya shillings, and this was harnessed by NEMA. We did have something with NEMA the previous year. And NEMA, that fund, Kenya Adaptation Fund, was a fund that covers different resources, different areas, sectors. One of them was water resources. It has agriculture, it has agroforestry, it has gender and relation to climate change. So there are different aspects of the Kenya Adaptation Fund. And one of the key things we're talking about is development of water harvesting assets and structures. So what it did was to have a little fund that was given, which you collaborated with NEMA in terms of mapping out areas and sensitizing where we could have water harvesting structures, assets that can be used towards future climate change mitigations. So you may not directly link up with the mainstream international funding, but you can come in as collaborators. One thing we can do when you're talking about sensitizations, you can link up and find out how do we sensitize the youth around the program that you're doing and work it out with Lake Basin. We are not promising funding. We are promising partnerships so that we understand that when you link up with Lake Basin, you have a partner, you have a collaborator, that you have a voice that can speak out to you outside there when you go to the meetings and see that you have this number of partners, you have this number of collaborators that are seeking out funding in terms of different programs. So be visible outside there. When you hear things are happening within the Lake Basin region, come on board, have conversations with us, and we'll be able to front out your voice and raise up the issue of the youth. Because we understand the youth are the backbone of the economy right now in terms of climate change. We need to have areas of water harvesting, and they're supposed to come on board. We are not locking you out entirely in terms of funding, but we're asking you to collaborate and come up on board so that when you have conversations across the board, you become our partner, you become people that we can both front out when you go for those budget meetings outside there with the treasury. We can have people that we have MOUs, we have concept notes, we have discussions that we can table out there and say that we need also additional funding to be able to bring on board other people in this conversation. So I just want to still encourage you, don't feel left out. There's still an opportunity. His Excellency, the President, has mapped out 15 billion trees production, and we as an authority or the RDAs have a target of 5 billion. We cannot do this alone. So we need partners, we have collaborators. So just link up with us, come on board and see what we can do. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Let's give a round of appreciation to all the panelists and those who made comments. Thank you so much. Since water was created for those who believe in creation, not even a single drop of water has ever disappeared on earth. Never. Even the one we consume still finally gets back to the water cycle. The only problem with climate change, it has altered the normal cycle. And that is why even our farms do not hold water enough for rain-fed agriculture. That is why our rivers do not have enough storage. It rains, there is bare land, water gets into the rivers directly and finally finds its way to the lakes or big water bodies, and we remain without water. So this problem can only be mitigated through some adaptive measures together with resilience practices, as some of the points that have been mentioned upfront, together with those who gave comments from the floor. So together we can do it. And as someone asked, but it was also a response from here, our meeting here is to now ensure that we come together. We develop a synergy. We see whose effort can do what, and when we bring all the efforts together, we will be able to improve on our resilience towards climate change and in regards to water availability in this region. Otherwise, thank you so much for this session, and I would give it back to our MC to tell us what next. Thanks so much, the facilitators. Now we can leave. Thank you.